Hi, this is Mayank, and I welcome you all to Srijan Wednesday webinars. For those who are attending for the first time, this is a community initiative by Srijan Technologies. As a part of this initiative, we host webinars every alternate Wednesday. We get speakers from different domains who talk about subjects like front-end technologies, UI UX, mobile apps, media, entrepreneurship, digital marketing, and many more. Today's webinar, titled Crash Course in New Product Development, is focused on how one of the surest ways to build a sustainably successful business is to build great products. This webinar will serve as a crash course where you will learn not only the basic concepts of product development and design thinking methodology, but also some critical aspects that you need to keep in mind while developing new products. I would now like to introduce a speaker. We have with us Mukesh Gupta. Mukesh is a director and customer advocate at SAP and an experienced design thinking and innovation coach. He has led design thinking based workshops across countries like India, China, Singapore, and Australia. He is the author of world's first business poem, Your Startup Mentor, which is available on Kindle. So without taking up any more time, let's get started. Mukesh, over to you.
Thanks, Mike, for the lovely introduction. Welcome everyone for the call. So what we are going to do today is I'm going to introduce you to some of the concepts of design thinking and how you can use these concepts to come up and develop new products. So let's start. So I'm sure every one of us very clearly knows what this logo represents. This is the logo of Pixar. So what we're going to do is we're going to examine what Pixar does to create the awesome movies that they create. They have the awesome record of 9 continuous movies which hit the #1 spot on the day of release. They have made and produced and released 14 movies so far, and out of those 14 movies, not a single one has been a loss-making one. So let's see how they go about producing and creating the movies that they do. And from that, we kind of take lessons and see how we can apply those lessons to build new products for ourselves. So the first thing that they do when they want to start a movie is get their directors and writers to pitch for movie concepts. So one of the very clear criteria that they use in order to decide which movie to further develop and which idea to greenlight is the fact that they decide what movies they would like to watch themselves with their families. So that's the most important criteria that they use. Similarly, in any product development activity, what we have seen is there are 2 kinds of things that we will, products that succeed and do really well. One is products that you want to use yourself, so you are the end customer for your product. The other is you design a product for someone who you really know intimately. So we'll come to that again at the end of the presentation when I talk about design thinking and the concepts. So the first thing that they do is decide whether or not the idea is a movie that they would like to watch with their family or not. So once they decide that yes, this is a concept that we would like to greenlight and we would like to see as a movie, the first thing that they do after that is pack their bags and go out and do a lot of research. So for example, if you've seen the movie Ratatouille, the entire team of designers and producers, they actually went out to see a lot of 5-star chefs, world famous chefs, their environments, their kitchens, how they work with their team, how they actually create their dishes, what their mannerisms are. They do a detailed analysis in terms of what is happening. So they do a lot of observation. They learn a lot about those characters so that when they recreate those characters in their movies, they are believable. They are actually something which you can relate to. So once you go out, do research, you do a lot of observation you do a lot of learning. So not only do they just observe and learn, they also take a lot of pictures, they shoot a lot of videos. At that point in time, they do not know what and where they will be using these photos and videos, but they know for sure that this is going to be useful at some point in time during the development of the movie. So they capture every single detail that they can and learn as much as possible about the profession and the environment, the context of the particular characters. So once they have that, they come back and they start developing the idea into storyboards. So these are nothing but small cartoon strips that they create, and they invite some of their own employees to do some basic voiceovers and to see how the entire story kind of moves from there on. So these are very, very simple paper hand-drawn comic strips with voice added onto them. So once they do that, what they start doing is they call brain trust meetings. So these are meetings of the entire producer and directors and the community of people who are working on the different projects. In this meeting, the producer, the director actually showcase what they have done so far. And these meetings are known to be really, really rich in terms of candor. People are open and honest about what is working, what is not working, and if they have any ideas or suggestions as to what could make the movie or the story work better, that is kind of shared here in this brain trust meetings. So if you've read the book by Ed Catmull, who's the CEO of Pixar, one of the things that he says is that they attribute majority of the success that their studio has had to these brain trust meetings. When they were acquired by Disney, one of the things that they started doing in Disney is to have a similar culture and a similar kind of meeting which they set up within the Disney environment as well, where it is okay to be open, honest and critical about the project and keep the overall end user, or for in this case the audience, and what will make the audience really sit up and take notice as the only criteria, and everything else kind of set aside. So what happens is once the director and the writers receive feedback in these brain trust meetings, they go back to their drawing boards and start working on those feedbacks as well. So the entire process of coming up with an idea and taking the initial storyboards to the brain trust and seeking feedback, all of this has a lot of uncertainty built into the process. They're not sure whether or not the movie is going to turn out the way it is going to turn out, and a lot of times it doesn't. So a lot of times you start with something and you kind of end with something else totally different and not where the original director or the writer had in mind to go, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty in the process. So once they have the feedback, they go back and iterate the entire process again, take the feedback, incorporate the feedback, whatever the director and the writers feel. The entire idea is to move from suck to not suck. So that's what Ed Catmull says. He says that the first version of all their movies really, really bad. And it is their responsibility as the producers and the directors and the executives to move it from being really bad to really awesome. And everything else that comes in between is through iteration and multiple iterations and feedback and candor meetings. There are times when a typically movie takes about anywhere between 18 months to about 24 months. And within this process, I'm sure that they have like close to about 20-25 brain trust meetings where they get feedback on all aspects of the end product, which is the movie itself. So once you start doing this, it is also critical that you have very, very strong teamwork built into it. Creating a movie is purely a teamwork. There is no one person who can actually have an impact on the movie. A movie will turn out to be a blockbuster only and if only every single department of the project actually puts in their best and work together as a team. So this means that the producers, the directors, the writers, the artists, the technical teams which actually do the animation, the set designers, everyone needs to come together, understand the vision of the director, and kind of work together as a team in order to build the movie as per the vision that the director has laid out. So, which is very, very critical, right? And one of the things that they also talk about is trusting the process. A lot of times you'll find that there's a lot of uncertainty. You do not know whether something is working, not working. And a lot of times movies do not work. They do not understand why it is not working, but they also understand that the process that they are following is a tried and tested process. They understand that as long as they have the clear intention that they want to create a really, really good end product, which is an outstanding movie that they would love to watch with their families, they are good. So they trust the process and actually follow the process as long as they are in the process. It is all good. So one of the things that they also make sure is to add a lot of emotional connect in every single thing that they do. So whether it is little things like, for example, the bonding of the two robots in the movie Wall-E, or whether it is the bonding between toys in Toy Story 2 or 3, whether it is the bonding between the toy and the child in Toy Story 1, whether it is the emotional connect between the two monsters in Monster University and Monster Inc. So there is a lot of emotional connect that they build in, because ultimately they understand that the audience is human, and the best way to connect with them is to actually touch their emotions. So it is critical that they bring in an element of emotional connect in all their movies. So once they do all of that, kind of results in a blockbuster movie. As I said earlier, 9 out of 14 movies that they have released so far have hit #1 spot on the day of release. This is a feat that no other studio has accomplished till date, anywhere in the world. So having said that and shared with you how the entire process of movie making works for Pixar, now let's move slightly into what learnings we can take from this entire process and how all of this correlates to design thinking as a methodology, and how we can use a similar process in our organization to build new products which not only our customers will love but also adopt en masse. So when you talk about design thinking, it is all about 3 things coming together. One is the right people, having the right space, and having the right approach of the process. So people, space, and approach, if you put all of these things together, kind of becomes the culture of the organization itself, right? So you need to have the right kind of people, give them the right kind of space, and give them the right kind of process, and you can rest assured that they will come up with something really, really good. So when we talk about design thinking as a methodology, and we're talking about people, we talk about people who are T-shaped. So typically in every design thinking project that we talk about, we want to staff the project with people who have deep or depth in one particular skill, one particular area, and understand a lot of other areas. So that's what I mean when I say a T-shaped person. So who understands and has expertise in one particular area, but also understands broadly a lot of other topics. And if you bring together people from different domain expertise, like for example, you have someone from sales, you have someone from marketing, you have someone from product management, you have someone from development, you might even want to have a customer or a prospect in the team, you have someone who is a project manager, and you find that you have a lot of differing skills, and when they all come together and follow the approach, they kind of can weave magic as Pixar does in their movies. The next aspect of design thinking is about space, right? So it's not enough to have the right people in, you also need to give them the right kind of space for them to actually start working on. What I mean by right kind of space is an area which is open for creativity, an area where there are a lot of items which people can actually use to create prototypes, an area where a lot of people can actually come together and own the area and do whatever it is that they want to in that area. So it might look chaotic, but at the same time, this is what actually can spur a lot of innovation, a lot of collaboration and teamwork in the project itself. The third aspect of design thinking is the process itself. So a lot of differing people have different sets of processes that they talk about when they are talking about design thinking. One of the processes that I talk about is a 6-step process, where the first step is to understand, observe, define a point of view, ideate, prototype, and test. Some of the leading authors might have a 5-step process. IDEO for sure has a 5-step process that they follow. But this is the process that I kind of follow and have seen work a lot and work really, really well for the teams that I have worked with. So let's kind of quickly delve a little deeper into the process itself and what I mean by the process, and kind of relate it back to the Pixar example that I had shared earlier. So before we go there, one very, very clear and critical aspect of design thinking is that you need to have the right question, right problem in order to come up with a really, really good solution. So there are two spaces, problem space and solution space, which very clearly defined, and we follow the same methodology that designers actually follow, which is diverge and converge in every single step of the process. So now let's come back and bring this all together on the story that we created in terms of how Pixar does its movies. So the first step in the process is to understand, right? So you need to understand who is it that you want to build the product for. So when I started the session, I also spoke about the fact that you can ideally, really, really successful products are built either for yourself or for people or for someone who you really, really know well. It doesn't matter who that person is, as long as you are able to relate to the person, as long as you are able to identify with the person and give a name and a persona to that person, you can actually create a good product for that particular person. So it is very, very critical that you understand who it is that you are developing the product for. You understand their personality, you understand what they like, what they don't like, you understand in what context do they lead their lives in, what are some of the challenges that they face, what are their behavioral characteristics, what are some of their professional, personal life characteristics. So the more you know about the person for whom you are designing the product, the better you will be in terms of making decisions when it comes to actual features, functionalities that go into the product itself. So very, very critical to understand who your user is. So once you understand who you are developing the product for, then you need to go out and do a lot of research to understand the context in which the particular person or the user is going to use your product. What is their life like? So what time do they get up? What kind of challenges do they face through the day? What kind of contextual information can you gather about that particular person, which can actually go into building a new product? So if you are developing a product for some of your existing customer base, then go out and spend some time with that particular customer base. So you can do this by 3 different ways. So one is you can actually see and observe. So you can be a fly on the wall and see the prospect or your customer go through their day-to-day activities, let's say for a week or so. To try and understand what are some of the areas which they actually struggle. The other way to do it is to ask people as to what are their struggles. What is it that they want to see as a product that can actually solve some of their problems. So what we have seen is that once you've done both, you also get to know the actual problems. So a lot of times what happens is when you ask someone as to know what their problem is, what is it that you want to, what is it that you can solve for them, typically they come up with, let's say for example, they say, I have X problem that I want you to solve. 99% of the times you can rest assured that that is not the real problem. The real problem lies somewhere else. The problem that they talk to you about is a symptom. So you need to dig deeper. You need to understand, truly understand what exactly is the problem. So how can you do that? You can do that by questioning, like for example, why do you think is this a problem? So how do you solve this problem right now? So what else does someone else do for the same problem? Why is it that you think this is a problem? What can you do to completely avoid it? What can you do to skip it? And things like that. So once you dig deeper, you ask why 5 times, 4 times, then you actually get to the root of the problem. And once you reach the root of the problem, you take that and you see the data that you have collected while observing the users, you will find that there is some amount of correlation. And once you find that correlation, that is the problem that you need to start working on to solve for that particular user. So once you observe and learn what is the problem that you want to solve, you actually sit down and define the problem. So this is the most critical step in the entire process, because this will actually define the outcome of your entire project, the product that you are going to develop, and the success of the product will actually depend upon the problem definition that you have, right? So if you have the right problem and solve the problem, you have a big successful product in your hands. If you identify the wrong problem, though you may have a very creative idea, though you may solve the problem that you have identified, if it is not the right problem, you'll find that there are very, very less takers for your product at all. So once you have the problem nailed, then the next step is to do a lot of ideation and a lot of prototyping. So this is very, very similar to the storyboarding that Pixar guys do. It needs all the ideation and the prototyping should be quick. It need not be really elaborate. It can even be the same thing that Pixar does, which is you can have comic strips, you can have paper drawn mock-ups, you can have prototypes which are people actually playing out how the product will look and feel like. Some fundamental things that we need to remember is that the entire purpose of creating these prototypes is not to show our developing or our product development prowess, but to actually collect feedback. So that is the most critical aspect of why we develop this prototype, right? So we need to have our own version of Candor or brain trust meetings where we collect feedback on what works, what doesn't work. One rule of thumb that you can always remember is the more clean, the more precise the prototype looks, the less feedback that you will get. So keep your prototype rough, keep it unfinished in order to be able to get the best feedback that is possible. So once you have the feedback, you start doing the testing in terms of collecting the feedback, putting it back into your product design, and iterating this, testing it with your brain trust meetings, your own version of brain trust meetings. You can invite people from outside of your organization. You can invite team members who are not part of your project. You can invite senior executives, and ideally you should actually do the testing as much as possible with the persona for whom you are trying to develop the product. So everything, all the other feedback, though you can take, but the deciding feedback that you incorporate in your product has to be the feedback that your persona or the person for whom you are building the product actually gives you, right? So as in any other creative endeavor, there will be a lot of uncertainty in the process. There will be times when you don't know whether the product development process is actually going well. You might get stuck in terms of not being able to come up with good ideas. You might get stuck that the ideas that you're developing are not kind of hitting the note, the right note with your prospects or customers. But remember that this uncertainty is part of the process, and you should trust the process, right? So as long as you continue to do the same, to follow the process, and keep in mind that the ultimate aim for you is to get feedback and acceptance from the person for whom you are developing the product. As long as that is your end objective, you can trust the process and continue to iterate, and you'll actually end up with a good product. So the other thing that I also want to bring here is that it is not a step-by-step process. So if, for example, you come up with an idea, you show it to your version of a brain trust meeting, where you invite the person for whom you're developing the product. He gives you he or she gives the feedback to you that it is not working. Then you can go back. Instead of working on that particular idea, you can probably look at a different idea. So if 2 or 3 times, if the idea is not working, if you get a feel that the problem statement is probably something that needs to be worked at, you start working at the problem statement. You again go back to your research that you have done, understand from that what other challenges are there that you can actually work at solving. You can actually go back and look in terms of whether you are even targeting the right person for whom you are building the product. And again, it's a process. And believe me, each process, the end-to-end steps, can be done anywhere between a half a day to maybe around a week's time. So it's very, very fast in terms of how you can do the iteration. It's very, very fast in terms of how you can do the complete end-to-end process and thereby shrink the overall product development cycle, because once you will only start developing the product as such, whether it is a software product which you start coding, or whether it is a physical product which you start actually manufacturing, will only be done once you know that the particular product is solving the particular challenge that your end user or the prospect or the customer for whom you are building the product actually says that yes, it does. So as with Pixar, iterate, move from scratchy prototypes to really, really good end products, right? So again, as you move along in the process, your prototype will continuously get polished, and once you have a clean idea in terms of the product, how it looks and feels like, that is the time when you actually start also working on the interaction design part of your product. How does a user actually work on the product? How is it that you can actually get this particular user or customer to get hooked to your product? So what is it that the psychological trigger that you are going to create so that the end user will actually continue to use and continue to engage with your product? So all of that kind of gets added in as you go along further in the process in terms of iteration, from moving from not such a great and a crappy or a crude prototype to a polished product. So again, as I said, teamwork is really, really critical in the entire process. If you put together people from diverse field, you will find that flares happen. A lot of discussions will go heated up. You'll find that there will be a lot of times when you will not be able to agree with each other. You will find that there are arguments galore. But as long as everyone is aligned to the fact that you want to create an awesome product for the customer that you have in mind, solving the problem that you're trying to solve, and as long as you have a leader who can actually bring everyone back and ensure that time-bound decisions are being made, you will really, really do well in terms of coming up or developing a great product. So again, as I was talking about Pixar movies having a lot of emotions, one place where a lot of people actually miss out is adding a little bit of emotional connect in their products as well. Irrespective of whether it is a tech product, whether it is a physical product, there is always a way for you to actually add some amount of emotional connect to the product itself. So whether it is the notifications from Facebook, whether it is the Google doodles that they have on their search page. So there's always a way for you to add some amount of emotions in your product. Do not miss adding or doing this particular aspect of your product, because this is what can actually differentiate between a decent product and a really good product. So once you have done all of this, I'm sure that you will have a blockbuster product at your hand. So there is a lot of things that you also need to do in terms of marketing the product well. So while doing the entire iteration process, when you're doing this prototyping, when you're doing the brain trust meeting, your version of brain trust meeting, you also understand how do you pitch this product to the customer. So that's also one of the reasons why it is important that you have a sales and a marketing guy in the team as well. So they know exactly what the pitch is going to be, exactly how the end customer is going to react to that pitch, and that's what you take to market in order to be able to connect with the persons for whom you are developing the product. So that kind of sums up my part of the presentation. So if you have any questions, I can answer them now. Mayank?
Well, that was a great session. Thank you, Mukesh, for sharing these insightful and interesting analogy between web product development and Pixar movie making. Moving on, I'm sure you all have a few questions. Please press the raise hand button on the control panel to ask them using your microphone, or type them in the chat box on your screen. Mukesh, while the questions start coming in, would you like us to give a quick recap of the session since a few people joined in a little late?
Okay, so what I was talking about was understanding how Pixar makes blockbuster movies, and applying or relating those steps with design thinking concepts. If I have to summarize the entire design thinking process, I would like to summarize it in this one slide. Let me just go back to that slide. Okay. So if I have to summarize what design thinking is all about and how you kind of need to or can develop really great products using design thinking, it is on this slide. So design thinking is all about having the right kind of people, giving them the right kind of space, and giving them the process which they can use to come up with some really great products. So when I talk about people, I'm talking about T-shaped people, where we have people from different fields who have in-depth knowledge about their particular field, but also understand a lot about the other aspects of business coming together. When I talk about space, I'm talking about having a creative space where people can move around, where people can fiddle with things, where people can actually have a storyboard, have the potential to actually build some physical prototypes as well. So that's the space aspect of it. Then comes the process. So different people talk about a different kind of process, but ultimately it all ends up in this. This picture summarizes all the processes that are there when it comes to design thinking methodology. So you have two kinds of spaces. One is problem space, one is a solution space. The problem space is where you actually identify what is it that you want to solve. So you start with end user in mind, observe what is happening in their lives, contextualize, observe, learn about their lives, learn about some of the challenges or problems that they are facing, which you would like to solve. Then you make choice in terms of the particular problem that you want to solve for the particular kind of a person. Once you have that, you kind of create the problems statement. And then once you have the problem statement, then you start doing ideation as to how do you solve this particular problem. So again, you make a lot of choices. You come up with hundreds of ideas which can actually address this problem. And once you have these hundreds of ideas, you play around with a few ideas, let's say for example 5, 6 ideas which you think have the most potential, and then kind of do prototyping for those particular ideas. Use your own version of brain trust meetings where you invite the person or persona or someone similar to the person that you are trying to develop the product for, showcase the product, collect feedback, and incorporate the feedback into your prototype, and do multiple iterations. If things are not working, you go back 1 step, you go back 2 steps, you go back 3 steps, and again start from there and see what works and what doesn't work. All of these can be done in really fast sprints. You don't need any technical development skills, or you don't need any. You do not do any coding until and unless you have a prototype that actually solves the problem that you are trying to address. Once you have that, Then you start putting in some amount of development, and then again continue the process in terms of collecting feedback and improving the interaction capabilities of the product for your end user. Once you do all of these things, I'm sure that you end up with a product that the persona that you create the product for actually is willing to adopt and wanting to use on a day-to-day basis. I think that kind of sums up what I presented today.
Thank you for the recap. So we have a question by Zehra, who would like to know that how to create realistic timelines in the ambience of uncertainties that are inherent to this process of product development. I'll repeat that question. How to create realistic timelines in the ambience of uncertainties that are inherent to the process.
Okay. Okay. So let me put it this way. I have done more than 40 design thinking workshops for various companies, including SAP and SAP's partner organizations. And typically these are 1 day or 2 day workshops that we do. And people come with specific problems that they are trying to solve. And when they go back from the workshop, they actually have 2 or 3 prototypes that can actually work as the solution for the particular problem that they're talking at. So one of the beauties of this entire process is that if you are running really short on time and you can get the persona or the person for whom you are trying to solve the problem in for a day or two, then you can actually do the entire process end to end in a couple of days or in a 3-day workshop. So that you can stretch it or you can compress it that quick as well. So having said that, typically what I would suggest you to do is have a week for every sprint, or maybe 4 to 5 days for every sprint, so that you can then work upon the problem and have a realistic timeline. So if you identified already who it is that you are going to develop the product for, so from there to have a working prototype, maybe about 4 to 6 weeks is really enough for you to come up with something really that really works. So I don't know whether that answers your question.
Thank you, Mukesh, for answering that. Zehra, in case you have a follow-up question or you want more clarification, please feel free to type in your question again. Mukesh, there's another question. So you mentioned a few times about something called a clean prototype. Would you want to elaborate on that a little? I mean, what is a clean prototype that should not be done?
Okay, so generally what happens is when we are trying to create a prototype, we end up and we have to show it to a prospective customer or an existing customer for a new product for them. We end up polishing the prototype enough so that it looks good, so that customers don't think it is in work in progress. A lot of times this pressure comes because senior executives are there in the room and they do not want to seem to be unprepared. So what we end up doing is having a clean layout. If you are clean wireframes, everything in their boxes, all these crossed, all the I's dotted. So that is what actually is a bad prototype looks like at the initial stage. At the initial stage, you should be actually looking at a prototype that you hand draw in front of a particular customer if you are looking at storyboarding or if you are looking at a sketching way of creating a prototype, how the screen could look like, how the screen could move, or how an interaction could look like. So the more crude it is, the more feedback that you get. It is human psychology. So if, for example, if something looks clean, neat, all the boxes right, all the everything in its place, properly done, using systems and wireframe designs, then what happens is the feedback that you get typically is of the nature that why don't you move this box here? Why don't you change the font? Why don't you change the color? Whereas that's not the feedback that we are looking at the start of the project. At the start of the project, the kind of feedback that we are looking at is whether or not this actually solves your need, whether or not this actually addresses the main problem that we are trying to solve. If it doesn't, let them tell you that it doesn't. It will save you a ton of time. And in order to enable them to tell you that it doesn't work, they should feel that there is not much work gone into the prototype itself, so that so they can actually give you the open and honest feedback.
Mukesh, we have a question by Bhanu Teja, who wants to know how to decide the team size at the start of the product development process, or whether it should be done or not.
So the ideal team size for any design thinking project, in my opinion, is about 6 to 8 people at the most. Less than 6, and it becomes very difficult to bring in a lot of these differences that I was talking about. And more than 8, it becomes really difficult to manage the team itself. So ideal size is in between 6 and 8.
Bhanu, in case you have a follow-up question, please feel free to type it in. Mukesh, there is another question about brain trust meetings. I mean, you mentioned that Pixar does, at times they have to do 18, 19 of them. I mean, is there a outcome-based limit? Because the feedback and iterations can be endless at times.
Yeah, so that decision whether or not to continue the iteration and continue to present at the brain trust meeting is not in the producer's or director's hands. So the way it works in Pixar is that as long as the movie is not released, they will continue to show the movie to the brain trust in those brain trust meetings. So once the movie's production is done, then it is done. So once the movie is done and released, what they do then is go back and do a post-mortem of what went well and what didn't go well in the entire process of making the movie. But until that point in time, until the movie is not finished production, it will continue to come up for the brain trust meetings. So one of the things that we can do in order to, in our own attempts of creating or developing new products, is to continue to have these brain trust meetings of something similar to that, as long as you think that these are not adding any more value. So a lot of times what will happen is beyond 5 or 6 meetings or 6 iterations or 7 iterations, you'll find that you have a more or less prototype which is kind of final, which actually solves the problem of the customer. And until that happens, you need to continue to do these meetings.
Thank you for answering the questions, Mukesh. Since we are running towards the end of the webinar, I would request those who still have questions to please mail them to webinars@srijan.in. Thank you once again, Mukesh, for such a knowledgeable session. We are sure everyone found your presentation very interesting and insightful. A big thank you to all the attendees for joining us today. I would also like to announce that our next webinar is on Fundraising 101 for the Startups on the 4th of March by Pranay Gupta. Pranay is a partner at 91 Springboard. This webinar will cover common mistakes to avoid while making business plan pitches, essentials of a good B plan, and other do's and don'ts for entrepreneurs. So stay tuned.